My name is Ethan Blackwood, and I'm writing this because I need someone to know what happened to us in Antarctica. I'm not sure if I'll make it out alive, but if you're reading this, please believe me when I say that what I'm about to tell you is true. It's not just a story, it's a warning. It all started last year when I was approached by the International Geophysical Year Committee. They wanted me to lead a team to Antarctica to investigate the disappearance of the Vanguard expedition of 1962. The Vanguard team had been sent to study climate change on the ice shelves, but they vanished without a trace after sending a final cryptic message. "We have found something beyond belief. It changes everything." At first, I was skeptical. Disappearances in Antarctica aren't uncommon. Harsh weather, isolation, and the sheer vastness of the continent can swallow entire teams. But that message gnawed at me. What could they have found that was so extraordinary? I assembled a small team of experts: Dr. Sarah Lynn, a glaciologist with a sharp mind for ice core analysis; Mark Thompson, a historian obsessed with polar exploration; Lisa Chen, a documentary filmmaker eager to capture our journey; and Jack Ramirez, our chief engineer and survival expert, whose calm demeanor kept us grounded. We arrived at McMurdo Station in late October 2024, just as the Antarctic spring was beginning. The air was crisp and the landscape was breathtaking. Miles of pristine white snow stretching endlessly under a pale sky. But there was an underlying sense of foreboding I couldn't shake. Maybe it was the stories I'd heard about Antarctica, tales of explorers driven mad by isolation, of strange lights in the sky, of entire teams vanishing without a trace, like the Swedish Antarctic expedition that faced harrowing challenges in 1901 to 1903. After a few days of preparation, we set out for the coordinates where the Vanguard team was last known to be. It took us 2 days by snowmobile to reach the area, a vast, featureless plain of ice that seemed to hum with an eerie silence. Using ground-penetrating radar, we located what appeared to be a structure buried beneath the snow. We set up camp, pitching our tents against the biting wind, and began digging. It was grueling work, the cold seeping into our bones, but after several hours, we uncovered the entrance to an old research station. The door was frozen shut, its metal surface encrusted with ice. With crowbars and sheer determination, we pried it open. Inside, it was like stepping back in time. The station was remarkably well preserved, as if sealed in a frozen tomb for decades. Laboratories filled with dusty equipment, living quarters with neatly made beds, and a small mess hall with tables still set for a meal that never happened. But what struck me most was the absence of any sign of the team. No bodies, no personal effects, just empty rooms and an oppressive silence. We began searching for clues. In the main laboratory, we found a series of journals and logbooks, their pages brittle but legible. I took one and began reading. The entries were dated from 1962, written by Dr. Henry Foster, the leader of the Vanguard expedition. At first, the entries were routine: temperature readings, ice core samples, and notes on wind patterns. But as I read further, the tone shifted. On July 15, 1962, Dr. Foster wrote, "Today, while conducting seismic surveys, we detected an anomaly deep beneath the ice. It's massive, larger than anything we've ever seen. We're going to investigate." The next few entries detailed their efforts to drill down to the anomaly. On August 1st, they broke through and sent a probe down. What they found was astonishing. A structure, man-made, buried under 2 miles of ice. "It's impossible," Dr. Foster wrote. How could there be a building here under all this ice? They decided to excavate further, but that's when things started to go wrong. On August 5th, Dr. Foster noted that several team members reported seeing shadows moving in the corridors, even when they were alone. Equipment began malfunctioning without explanation, and there were strange noises at night, low, guttural sounds that seemed to come from the ice itself. By August 10, the situation had escalated. "Last night, I saw something in my quarters," Dr. Foster wrote. "It was a figure, tall and dark, standing at the foot of my bed. When I turned on the light, it was gone. I'm starting to think we've disturbed something we shouldn't have." The last entry was on August 15th. "We've made a terrible mistake. The structure, it's not of this world. There are things here, ancient and malevolent. They're watching us. We need to leave, but I fear it's too late." And that was it. No further entries. I looked up from the journal, my heart pounding. The others were reading similar accounts from other journals. Lisa was filming everything, her camera capturing our growing unease. "Ethan, what do you think happened to them?" Sarah asked, her voice trembling. "I don't know," I replied, "but I think we need to find out what that structure is." Jack, ever the pragmatist, said, "First, let's make sure we're safe. Let's set up some security cameras and alarms. We don't want any surprises." We spent the rest of the day setting up our equipment and securing the station. As night fell, we gathered in the mess hall, trying to make sense of what we'd found. The wind howled outside, a constant reminder of our isolation. That's when it started. A low, guttural sound echoed through the corridors, like a moan from the depths of the earth. We all froze, listening. It came again, closer this time. "What is that?" Lisa whispered, her camera shaking in her hands. "I don't know," I said, "but let's check the cameras." We hurried to the monitoring station we'd set up. The screens showed the corridors, but they were empty. Then, on one screen, a shadow flickered across the wall. It was brief, but unmistakable. "Did you see that?" Mark exclaimed, his eyes wide. "Yes," I said, my mouth dry. "Let's go check it out." Armed with flashlights and walkie-talkies, we ventured into the corridor where the shadow had been seen. It was dark, the only light coming from our flashlights. As we walked, I felt a chill that had nothing to do with the temperature. Suddenly, Sarah screamed. We turned to see her pointing at the wall. Scratched into the ice were words, "They are coming." We backed away, hearts racing. "Who wrote that?" Jack demanded. "None of us," I said. "It must have been here already." But even as I said it, I knew that wasn't true. The scratch marks looked fresh, the ice still glistening where it had been carved. The next morning, we decided to investigate the structure mentioned in Dr. Foster's journal. Using the maps and notes left behind, we located the drilling site about a mile from the station, marked by a large hole in the ice now filled with snow. We dug out the entrance, our breath visible in the freezing air, and found a tunnel leading down, reinforced with rusted metal supports. It was dark and cold, the walls slick with ice, but we pressed on, driven by a mix of curiosity and dread. After descending for what felt like hours, we emerged into a vast cavern. In the center stood the structure, a massive obsidian black monolith, towering at least 50 feet high, covered in intricate carvings that glowed faintly in the light of our flashlights. The air was heavy, oppressive, as if the cavern itself was holding its breath. "It's beautiful," Sarah whispered, her voice echoing in the silence. "But what is it?" Jack asked, his flashlight sweeping over the monolith's surface. Mark stepped forward, examining the carvings. "These symbols, they're not from any culture I know. They look ancient, older than Sumerian or Egyptian." As he spoke, his voice changed, becoming deeper, more resonant. We all turned to look at him. His eyes were glazed over, as if he was in a trance. "Mark, are you okay?" I asked, stepping toward him. He didn't respond. Instead, he began chanting in a language none of us understood. The words were harsh, guttural, and seemed to reverberate through the cavern, as if the walls themselves were responding. "Mark, stop it!" Lisa shouted. But he continued, his voice growing louder. Suddenly, the carvings on the monolith began to glow brighter, casting an eerie blue light across the cavern. A low hum filled the air, and we felt a vibration under our feet. The temperature dropped sharply, our breath forming clouds in the air. "Something's happening," Sarah said, panic in her voice. "We need to get out of here." But before we could move, Mark collapsed, unconscious. The humming stopped, and the carvings dimmed, leaving us in near darkness. We carried Mark back to the station, laying him on a cot in the mess hall. He was breathing, but wouldn't wake up. His skin was cold, almost icy, and his pulse was faint. "What just happened?" Lisa asked, her camera still rolling, capturing every moment of our fear. "I don't know," I said, "but I think we've awakened something." That night, things got worse. We heard footsteps in the corridors, heavy and deliberate, but when we checked, there was no one there. Our radio started picking up static, and in the static, we could hear whispers, voices speaking in the same guttural language Mark had used. Lisa reviewed her footage and found something chilling. In the background of one shot, a tall, shadowy figure stood in the tunnel, its form barely discernible, but unmistakably there. Then, Jack disappeared. We searched the entire station, calling his name, but he was gone. The only clue was a note scrawled on the wall in his handwriting. "They took me." We were terrified. Sarah was in tears, clutching her flashlight like a lifeline. Lisa was hyperventilating, her camera now a burden she couldn't put down. I was trying to keep it together, but my mind was racing. What had we stumbled into? "Let's barricade ourselves in the mess hall," I suggested. "We'll stay together until morning." We pushed furniture against the door and set up a watch. I took the first shift, sitting by the door with a flashlight, my heart pounding with every creak of the station. Hours passed and nothing happened. Then, around 3 a.m., I heard a knock on the door, soft but distinct. I froze. "Who's there?" I called out. No answer, just another knock, louder this time. I shone the flashlight through the small window in the door. There, standing outside, was Jack. But something was wrong. His eyes were completely black, like pools of ink, and his skin was pale, almost translucent, as if the life had been drained from him. "Jack, is that you?" I asked, my voice shaking. He smiled, but it was not a human smile. "Let me in, Ethan," he said, his voice a twisted mockery of Jack's, low and guttural. I backed away, horrified. "No, stay back." He began pounding on the door, his strength unnatural. The barricade held, but I knew it wouldn't last forever. "Wake up, everyone," I shouted. "We need to leave now." We grabbed our gear and headed for the exit, but when we got there, the door was frozen shut, ice covering it completely, as if it had formed in seconds. "It's trapped us," Sarah cried, her voice breaking. Then, from the shadows, figures began to emerge. Tall, dark shapes with no faces, just emptiness where their eyes should be. They moved toward us, silent but purposeful, their presence filling the air with dread. We ran, but the station was a maze of corridors, and we were lost. The shadows seemed to be everywhere, their forms flickering in and out of sight. That's when I remembered the emergency exit. "This way," I yelled, leading them to a hatch that led to the surface. We climbed out, into a blizzard that had sprung up out of nowhere. The wind was howling, and visibility was zero, but we kept moving, hoping to find our snowmobiles. Behind us, I heard the creatures emerging from the station, their forms barely visible in the storm. Their whispers carried on the wind, chilling me to the bone. We reached the snowmobiles and sped away, leaving the station and whatever was in it behind. But as we drove, I realized that Mark was still inside, unconscious. We couldn't leave him. "We have to go back," I said, slowing my snowmobile. "Are you crazy?" Lisa screamed, her voice barely audible over the wind. "They'll kill us." "But Mark, he's gone, Ethan. We have to save ourselves." Reluctantly, I agreed, and we continued on, heading back to McMurdo Station, the whispers fading into the storm behind us. We made it back to McMurdo Station, battered and broken, but alive. The authorities were shocked by our story, but they sent a team to investigate. When they arrived at the old station, they found it empty. No sign of Mark or Jack, no sign of the structure beneath the ice. The tunnel we had descended was gone, filled with ice as if it had never existed. They thought we were mad, suffering from Antarctic hysteria, a known psychological condition caused by the extreme isolation and cold. But I know what we saw. I know what happened. Lisa's footage was corrupted, every frame distorted with static and glimpses of those shadowy figures. Sarah refused to speak about it, retreating into herself, haunted by what we'd experienced. I tried to move on, to return to my life, but I couldn't shake the feeling that something had followed me. Sometimes, late at night, I hear that guttural language again, whispering in my mind. I see shadows in my peripheral vision, always just out of reach. I feel a presence watching me, waiting. I've done some research since returning. I found stories of other Antarctic expeditions that encountered strange phenomena, unexplained footsteps, voices in the dark, and a sense of being watched, like the accounts from Ross Island or the Wordy Hut. Some even speak of a third man presence, a mysterious entity that appears in times of crisis, though whether it's benevolent or malevolent is unclear. Encounters with the supernatural in Antarctica. I fear that whatever we found in Antarctica has marked me. It's only a matter of time before it claims me, just like it claimed the others. The monolith, those carvings, that language, they weren't human. They were something ancient, something that should have stayed buried. So if you're reading this, stay away from Antarctica. Stay away from the ice. There are things down there that should never be disturbed, because once you find them, they find you, and they never let go.